morning, good afternoon, good evening. Here is a picture of Nelson Chamisa at the celebration of King Charles III's birthday in Harare, at the British Embassy in Harare. In one of his recent postings, Chamisa has boasted that he is a leader who pivots on truth and true north. I find that outrageous, to say the very least, given what we know about the man. Zimbabwe is a failed state because for the last 45 years, we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. That is at the heart of it. We cannot make any meaningful progress until we address that problem. The case of rigged elections and bad governance. We cannot also pretend that MDC-CCC have not played a role in that these last 25 years. They have. Some people have failed to understand that the people of Zimbabwe in the late 1990s made a conscientious decision to elect the opposition and give them the key role of implementing the democratic reforms. People realized that as long as Zanu PF remained in office, they would be stuck with the Zanu PF dictatorship. They realized that. And so the decision was to elect an opposition whose primary purpose would be to implement the democratic reforms necessary to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. Why some people have struggled to grasp that fundamental shift beggars belief. Their failure to grasp it does not change the reality on the ground. We need competent opposition parties who will implement the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. That is at the heart of it. The people of Zimbabwe have risked livelihoods, limbs, and even human lives to elect MDC-CCC leaders in the hope that once in power, they will implement those democratic reforms. The reality is they failed to implement even one token reform, even when they had the golden chance to do so in the 2008 to 2013 GNU. Again, the failure of some people to understand that the GNU, the primary purpose of that GNU was to implement the democratic reforms, is to be deeply regretted. But there it is. To come back to Chamisa, 2008, 2008 to 2013, he was one of the leading leaders in the MDC who failed to implement even one token reform in 5 years. Why? Well, because Mugabe bribed the MDC leaders with the trappings of high office, and they forgot about the reforms. And ever since the GNU debacle, MDC CCC leaders have participated in flawed elections out of greed. It's not that they didn't know the elections were flawed. They knew it. I've often quoted this quotation from David Coulthard's book, in which he readily admitted that the 2013 election process was so flawed, so illegal, the only logical step was to withdraw. But when he and his fellow MDCN, because there were two main factions then, the one led by Welshman Ngwe and MDCT led by Morgan Tsvangirai. When one side realized that if they do not participate, the other half will participate and get the gravy train seats that Zanu PF dangled in front of them to entice them to participate. And that was the reason why they participated. Why some people, even now with the benefit of hindsight, refuse to accept that political reality is one of the biggest problems that the nation has. Why we have failed to move on. But like it or not, the truth of the matter remains that Zimbabwe is a failed state because we failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections in the last 45 years. And now we are facing the prospect of Zanu PF going into the 2028 elections, rigging those elections, and getting away with it. Because Nelson Chamisa and company will call people to participate in their numbers in those flawed elections, promising them that this time they will win, just as he promised in 2023 that CCC was going to win big. Of course, he was lying. And this comes back to what we're talking about today. Here he is in his posting. Are you a leader or a misleader? There is a huge difference between a leader and a misleader. A leader pivots on truth and true north. Well, I ask Chamisa and all those Chamisa Chete brigade members out there, did Chamisa pivot on truth and true north when he said he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections? If he did, then how is it possible that Zanu PF blatantly rigged those elections? SADC, the AU, And all the election observers worth a spit all condemned the 2023 elections as flawed and illegal. So I come back again. Did Chamisa lie when he said he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections? I believe he knows he lied. The trouble with people like him, he believes he can get away with it as long as he tells people what they want to hear. And the people of Zimbabwe want to hear that their leaders pivot on truth and true north. What they do in reality on the ground is another matter. And that is where our weaknesses are. We should not take Chamisa on his word that he pivots on truth and true north. It doesn't. When he lied about plugging the vote rigging loopholes, he was misleading people. He was, according to his own words, a misleader, pivoting on propaganda, lies, misdirection, and misinformation. We need to make that quantum leap to see Chamisa for who he really is, if we are going to stop a repeat of the case of rigged elections and misgovernment in 2028. It should not be a quantum leap. Believing that Chamisa lied about plugging the vote rigging loopholes has been agonizingly difficult for some people. Make us believe why it is so. These are people who cannot accept facts and reality if it contradicts their narrow perception of life. They want to see Chamisa as a demigod who does not put anything wrong, does not do anything wrong, and who should not be held to account. Well, Chamisa is a mere mortal, and one with a well-documented track record as corrupt, incompetent, and a liar. I'll close by playing a video of Chamisa's interview with BBC, where he was taken to task on that very issue of lying.
Ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye akomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana na Trump akatibvunza kuti nawe akomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election, $15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Kasangana na Trump akatibvunza kuti nawe akomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
I repeat, Nelson Chamisa is a liar. He is a leader who pivots on propaganda, lies, misdirection, and misinformation. Just because he claims that he is a leader who pivots on truth and true north does not mean he is that kind of leader. We are a nation that is in desperate need for meaningful political change. We cannot afford to go into 2028 election and he lies to the people and con them to participate in those elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship and the people and the suffering of the people out of greed. This is not a quantum leap. It's a common sense leap. Chamisa lied in 2023. And not only 2023. He made the same lie in 2018 when he conned people to participate in those elections. We need to snap out of our complacent position and deal with that mentality, deal with that reality. I repeat, Zimbabwe is a failed state and we cannot afford another rigged election 2028 to perpetuate this Zanu PF dictatorship. This, I believe, is the Holy Grail before this nation. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good day.